Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Pam. You have found Camper Jazz. If you're a regular subscriber, welcome back. If you're a new subscriber or have just found us and are interested in what you can do in a Honda Jazz for car camping or car life, especially if you have a dog with you, then I'm hoping that this will be of interest. First of all, I have a few little bits to say to you. This is a recent car camping trip to Loo, and I parked along the seafront at Hanforth, I think it's called, but it's overlooking Loo Island. It's a lovely spot. You can walk all the way back into Loo along the coast path. It does say no overnight tents, motorhomes and caravans. That's a big picture on the no overnight sign. It says nothing about cars. So I stayed for 2 nights, had no issues. Further down, there were motorhomes parked up. They also stayed and didn't seem to get bothered or moved on. So while you're watching my pictures of Loo, and then as we move on to Tintagel to meet up with a friend, Phil, I wanted to tell you a little bit about my car camping and car life journey. Because on Sunday, when this video goes out, that will be exactly 3 years to the day since I first headed out on a car camping trip. 3 years, that's a long time ago. It was roughly 6 weeks after my late husband passed away, very unexpectedly, and I had my tent with me because I was a tent camper. But my idea was, on that trip, I knew I was going away for 2 weeks. I was going to stay on site. I was going to put my tent up. But I was hoping that I'd be able to afford to stay longer. But when I tell you that I had to have a loan for the money for hubby's funeral, you'll realise that when I say money was tight, it was. So I thought if I could arrange the car that I didn't have to spend every night on a campsite and could maybe do some little stopovers, that would be ideal. And so in July 2021, I started playing around with ways to sleep in the car. And so I'm going to break the Loo video in just a minute, and I'm going to show you a little bit of my 2021 first ever car camping setup. So I had the Jazz, which I'd bought when hubby passed away, as we had a disability vehicle which they took back. I worked out that if I laid the back passenger side seat down, it was pretty flat and I could turn the back area of the car into a bed. I'm only 5'2". The bed didn't have to be too long. It would just be for the odd night when I couldn't afford a campsite. So I stored some water, a ridge monkey, some plates, some cutlery under the folded up seat. That was quite handy. My chemical toilet sat in the driver's side footwell at the rear. I had a lap tray to eat off, and just covered the seat with a throw which I could chuck on me at night. I had a little storage unit from the house, a plastic one that I filled with other essentials, some food, some craft bits to keep me occupied, book to read, etc. Cooker went on top. Boxes of clothes went on top of Ted's cage, which was actually behind that seat. I had a cool box on the front seat with some more clothes and my tent, my electric hookup, cable, and general camping bits that I might need, my blow-up airbed, etc. for in the tent. And that was the setup. It was just me and Ted. So that was 2021. This again is Phil and Ruby, his dog. He and his late wife Chris were friends of mine who I made while I was travelling Scotland. And we had arranged to meet up for a few days in Tintagel, where we stayed on King Arthur's car park. £5 a night, £10 for the 24 hours. Anyway, here's the dogs enjoying Cornwall. I'm going to tell you now a little bit more about 2021. As I said, I'd arranged to go away for 2 weeks. My first night in the car ever was on the way up to Scotland. I spent the night at T-Bay Services. It was £12. I parked right in front of the entrance, which was busy all night long. Very well lit. It was a motorway services, but it is a nice one because it's got a farm shop, and that was okay. I made my way on the next day and started going around where I'd booked my campsites. I spent 2 weeks doing that. It was finishing off part of the places that we didn't get to finish when my husband unexpectedly died while we were on holidays in Scotland in the June. So it was quite a distressing time. I probably wasn't ready for being off on my own camping, but it's something that I felt I needed to do, so I'd gone back. It was my first time ever camping alone, and it was very, very different from being a couple. But never mind, my 2 weeks with car camping ended up being just over 2 months. To be honest, I was amazed that I'd managed to spend almost 7 weeks by the time I got back, actually just sleeping in my car. I stayed on some car parks. I did stay on 1 or 2 sites, which I'd rung up and checked if they would take a car camper. And yeah, it worked okay. Mostly, I just parked up somewhere where there were people around, other campers parked up, etc. It was a learning curve because I'd never car camped before. I'd never slept out in my car before. So it was something completely new to me. I was on my own except for Ted. So yeah, I would still say to anyone thinking of car camping for the first time, do it. Don't be scared. 3 years on, I've still got no horror stories to tell you about people banging my window in the middle of the night or being asked to move on. It's never happened to me. And I know so many other people now that it's also never happened to. So don't listen to all the scare stories on Facebook. Obviously, you do need to have your own security measures. Mine, I lock the doors. I don't always shut the windows. I don't always shut the sunroof, but I do lock the doors. In those first trips out, I always made sure that I had a strong phone signal wherever I camped. If I didn't have a phone signal, I didn't camp there. And as I said, I tried to park around people. 3 years on, parking around people is the last thing I do. And unless, of course, I'm going there to meet them. And I never even look at my phone to see if I've got a signal these days. If I find a spot that I like, I will stay there. As long as it's legal, that's it. So when I got back home in 2021, I knew I had to move out of my flat. It was a disabled flat. And I ended up moving in with my daughter, finding a job and earning some money so I could pay for the funeral and basically survive. So I did that until I decided to get our old caravan out of storage. and moved into that. And I spent most of the winter of 2021 up to late spring 2022 living in the caravan. And what I'm going to do now is show you the setup that I had in 2022. But first of all, I'll let you have a look at our little wander into Merlin's cave at Tintagel. Come on, you two. So while you're enjoying the scenes of Cornwall, let me tell you that it was spring 2022. After a winter in the caravan, I decided I was going to head down to Cornwall, go for a little wander around there, go visit my boys in North Devon, and then head off to Scotland. I simplified things. I made a longer bed because I knew I was going to be staying in it longer, so I wanted to be able to stretch my legs out, not curl up. There's Ted sat in the cage, and that's where his cage was. The seat was up just the same, on top of it were the clothes, etc. I had a different lap tray, the other one broke. My map, my touring guide to Scotland, although I've been so many times I really probably didn't need it, but there's always somewhere new. And I just tried to make it simple, some bungees with things hanging on them, a water bowl for the dog, etc. Stored the water container behind the seat and the fire extinguisher, my flask and so forth. That was all tucked away. And I invested in some overseat storage hangers where I kept my plates, cutlery, all that sort of thing. Underneath there was my ridge monkey, my plate, and other side I had another little storage unit I'd made myself, and that just had like toiletries and wet wipes, deodorant, things like that in. I'd made some bunting, and I'd put a big long piece of fleece which I'd velcroed to the ceiling, so that was fine. I'd made myself some window blinds. This is when I was still at the caravan park where I stayed with my caravan in Newton Abbot. Yeah, and in the front there you can see was my cool box. In the back I had now a tyre inflator and charger. It was only a cheap one, I think it was £60 in Halfords, but I had one flat tyre, and I thought if that happens in Scotland it would be handy to just pump it up to get to the next garage. So that was it. That you can see I still had all the seats in the car, but I just changed it around a little bit to give me more room to sleep in 2022 than I'd had when I went off, just with the idea of odd night. At the back was my bug squatter, some of my kitchen equipment, my washing up bowl, etc. And I'd found that under the bed, which all I had was my caravan cushions, I'd managed to store some things there. And around the front, I'll show you now, as we open the door. In the footwell of the front seat was my little two-man tent in case I needed to stay on site, and I also had my electric hookup and that there. So my basic camping stuff and my boxes with other bits and pieces that I was taking with me. Some craft stuff, some different household bits and pieces, extra clothes like waterproofs and that sort of thing. I put the caravan in storage, of course, and stayed in the car for, well, it was May until August. And I came back to Devon for August for the kids' school holidays, so as I could look after the grandkids, have days out with them. At that time, I did a revamp of the car again, simply because I had the idea that I was wasting money staying on the caravan site, and I planned in 2023 to try to go full-time in the car. Altered the setup to make some new blinds. Ted had a new smaller cage, and I had a piece of wood cut that went across where the parcel shelf was, and all my items basically went on top of there, including my new EcoFlow power unit, only 256 amp one, but big enough to keep my phone charged. I made a little cover to go over the seat, and in that was a pocket that held a piece of wood, and my caravan table would stand up against that, resting on its leg. Chemical toilet was still in the back on the floor, and I still had storage units going over the seat that kept a lot of my kitchen bits in. I went back to work, but in those months over the autumn, I made some gradual improvements inside the car. I had a washing bowl fitted into the piece of wood. You can see that now. Ted's cage was still in place. I used that with, I put a cover over it and put some storage pockets on that. And as you can see, there's where the parcel shelf was. So I basically slept with my feet under the parcel shelf. And that setup did me for some nice little weekends away over the autumn of 2022. I went off for a couple of week breaks in between work, and I spent the winter of 2022 back on the caravan site in my caravan, but knowing that 2023 was going to bring some changes, as I intended to go full-time in the car. Okay, so this is Totnes. This is after our trip to Tintagel, we decided to have a look around the shops at Totnes and spend the night in the furthest car park along the river. It's £10 overnight, and you need to have cash because the parking app doesn't work if you're a car trying to park as a motorhome overnight. But anyway, we had a good night there. It was nice and peaceful. So I'm going to take you back now to 2023. And the only changes I made before I went off in 2023 was to the parcel shelf. I put some little extra units on there. Just reconfigured it a little bit so that my cooker was on top. I put a little wooden unit in and some storage boxes. Everything else stayed the same, except we did away with Ted's big cage. And this is Exmouth Beach on a very hot day after we left Totnes. The dogs had a great time, as did Ruby, Phil's dog. And I'll let you have a little look at that before I bring you up to 2024. So after my 7 weeks in 2021 and my almost 4.5 months in 2022. I also spent 5 months of 2023 car camping. Or should I more accurately say doing Carlife, because I didn't have a home to go back to. I was living permanently 24/7 in the car, and I was getting about and enjoying it. But money being a little bit tight, I went back to work in the September of 2023, and in the October the opportunity arose to move into a flat. I decided that I would give it a go, as it had been a while since I'd lived in bricks and mortar, having only spent a few months with my daughter, then being in the caravan, then long spells in the car. So October 2023, as a lot of my regular subscribers know, I moved into a lovely little flat in Newton Abbot where I was working, and I stayed there until it finally drove me mad in January 2024, because I just wanted to get back out on the road again. Plus, as much as I loved my job and where I was working, at the end of the day I was increasingly suffering from back problems. This is something that went back right to my 20s, and it was never likely to improve from then. But the spells of having back pain were becoming more regular, and I was having to take time off because of it. So I decided I was just going to go back in the car, go travelling, and to really try to make the most of the time that I've got being fit and able to walk, because who knows what's around the corner. When you've got a back that has constant problems and gives you constant pain, I suppose you live with the fact that you never know when it's going to be a point where long walks and so forth become a distant memory. So yeah, take the bull by the horns, and I went for it in 2024 with full-time Carlife. No looking back, and I'm going to show you in a moment what the 2024 setup was. It started with me trying to make the car a bit warmer and more spacious by having the seats all taken out except for the driver's seat, and I lined the boot and the floor under the passenger side, front and rear. And then while I was in the flat, I put together some little units using some offcuts of plywood and some bits of old furniture. I got a tin of paint and some Fablon. I made them into two nice little units, and also made a bed unit, which I used still the caravan cushions, which I'd kept when I got rid of the caravan. And that was the setup that I started off with the first week of February in 2024. So as you can see, I had my toilet, my units, which were all fixed in, but also had bungees around them to hold things in place. With the bed, the setup actually worked quite well. Obviously, as most of you will know that follow the channel, we went off to Scotland that second week of February after a trip up through Wales. And we didn't leave there until June, when we came back through Wales down to Devon. It was brilliant. I got to meet up with some lovely people. We had a meet-up with Phil, Gillian and David and Lindsay at Glenbuckty in Fraserburgh. That was amazing. We had 3 days together there. We moved on together, except for Gillian that had to go home. And I then spent another 10 days with David, part of that with Phil. And after that, I met up with David and Lindsay on numerous weekends, and we became firm friends and got to do some lovely exploring together. And my videos of some of those meetups and visits are all on my channel. Anyway, that was my setup in 2024 until I got back in June. Now the reason I changed it, my back has been playing up more and more, and it turns out, as the doctor believes, that it's actually a slipped disc that keeps causing the issues. I have to wait months before I can go to physio. An appointment has been made for the end of September just for the video call to decide whether the physiotherapist will put me on the books. So I knew that part of the issue was bending over to get things out of the cupboards. It meant me sort of either sitting on the bed or standing and bending over in the car to reach things. So I had a real good think about what had worked best. And I decided that the actual thing that had worked best was when I'd had the little plastic storage units in the car. So that got me thinking, and I've now got a revamped design to continue Carlife in 2024, which actually at the moment seems to be working. So here we go. As promised is a little look at the new setup. Okay, we have a front seat with Ted and little Lolly. In the front, other than the fact that I've got my pillow on the bed and their dog bowl in its usual place, because that's where they're used to it. I've got the bed still where it was. On the back seat, I've got my backpack. The dog leads are all hung up. I've got my hat strapped to it. The door's got its bug cover on. Yeah, the door is painted. It has got flowers on it. It's also got a little harbour scene painted on it, and I've got a collection of shells in the door handle. There's my 5 litres of water. There's another 5 litres that normally sits in the back. Ted's got a new larger cage, which he alternates with Lolly when they are in the mood to do so. I've got a top fixed onto the dog cage, a wooden one. It's got my cooker, my frying pan and plate are there. I've got some storage boxes that's got things like my coffee and cup and so forth in. My EcoFlow, now it doesn't sit up there when I'm driving. This is in parked up mode. When I'm driving, it sits in the front under the pillow so as I can plug it in. I've got a backrest, which is the cream thing that you can see, so that when I'm sat in the back of the car now, I've got support for my back rather than just a pillow. And here we're at the back of the car. I've got a plastic unit at the back here, and then obviously another one that was next to the dog cage. I've got a bungee strap that's got my coats over, a bag for my dirty washing, a little step stool so I can reach my roof box, my sleeping bag and 2 boxes of clothes are there. Then the laptop bag hasn't got a laptop, it's got some knitting wool. I've got 2 cool bags rather, and they've got my clothes in. And there's my chair, which actually goes across the back and hooks on under the bungees. It is easily accessible. I either can reach it while I'm sat here, or I can walk around to the back of the car to get it out. No more bending and stretching, which is helping the back as I've managed to start going for some slightly longer walks again. I hope you've enjoyed what I've covered in today's video. I'm going to do a second part to this where I'm going to answer some more questions and go into some more details on Carlife. But for now, I'd like to leave you with a look at my recent return visit to Pitmedden Gardens, which is in Scotland, of course, and I hope you enjoy our little look around. It's at Pitmedden, it's a National Trust property, and as you enter, it's laid out to a reconstructed farmhouse. All the implements laid out, and of course a dresser, and this would have been the cosy part of the house. And here we have music playing in the room. This would have been the parlour. This would have been the best room, with the fireplace and the laid out table. And here we have bedroom with a brass knob double bed, a bit like bed knobs and broomsticks. We also have a room with a collection of various artefacts, brass, pewter, little trophies, that sort of thing. And lots of stoneware, jugs and little oil lamps, that type of items. And there's a old stable area with an exhibit of all old farm equipment and machinery. So here we've got some old tractors, wheels, and general farming implements by the look of it. This is really unusual. We walked through here. They have beehives, but they've also cut the underneath of the trees. An outside area, as well as the exhibits that are in the barns. They've got a collection of farming ploughs and agricultural equipment here, as I imagine you would expect to find at a farming museum. Blended, some have been painted back to their original colours. But I found it all quite interesting, even though I'm not a farmy type person. And you have both the outside exhibits and old farm buildings that have got exhibits of other items. This one was ploughing equipment and farm machinery. There was an old threshing machine. All very interesting, and information on the walls that tell you all about it. The gardens are really lovely. There's a sculpture garden. There's also a collection of sundials, as well as the lovely planting that they've got going on here. So definitely well worth a visit. Free to National Trust members. There's car parking area, and it's in an area that basically you've got so many other lovely castles and houses to visit within maybe a 10-15 mile radius. So I'd say when you're passing, definitely one to go and have a look at. I've got 2 more Scotland videos coming out on Tuesday and Thursday. And of course, I've got part 2 of my Carlife video, an extension to this one that looks in a little bit more detail at the inside of the car, as it is now, and how I use it in daytime and nighttime mode. And it's also going to cover some questions that I've been asked along the way about Carlife and finding park ups. I hope you'll join us then.